Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the December 11th Clark County School Advisory Council. Thank you all for being here. Chair Marshall is absent today, so in her absence, I'm stepping in as chair for the day. And I apologize, especially Isla. I don't know if you're the only one there in person. I planned to be there to host, but I had a sick child this morning that I had to stay home with, so needed to sign in remote. With that, let's go ahead and move forward with introductions. I'm Glenn Young, Vice Chair of the County Council. And then I know Isla's there in person, so you want to go ahead and then Amy, if you would call people that are online.
Yes. I'm Isla Westgard. I will be the NAC, which is the Neighborhood Association Council of Clark County. Jordan?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jordan Bogey, Senior Policy Analyst. I support the County Council and County Manager's Office.
Right.
Jose Alvarez, Clark County Community Planning.
Kimberly?
Hi, Kimberly Walker Norton, Clark County Public Health Program Manager, School Health and Safety Program.
Yeah. Left.
Oh, hi, sorry. This is Leanne Bremer. I am an attorney with Miller Nash, and I assist the Clark County school districts with their capital facilities planning and impact fee calculations.
Thank you. Left.
This is Les Brown. I'm the Executive Director of Communications Technology and Operations for the Washougal School District.
Mike?
Hello, I'm Mike Nerland. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning at EPD 112.
Miles?
Hi, it's Miles
Lawson.
Clark County Public Health.
Do you want to introduce yourself, Jen?
Oh, sure. Jenna Kay with Clark County Community Planning.
And I'm Amy Wooten with Clark County Community Planning. That's it.
And we still do not have a quorum.
I'm assuming we still do not have a quorum.
Still do not have a quorum.
Okay. All right. With that, we do not have a quorum at this point, so we will, unless there's any objection, we'll move the adoption of the December 2024 and April 2025 notes or minutes. We'll move that to the end of the agenda, assuming that hopefully we have a quorum at that point in time. If not, we'll need to wait until the next meeting to approve those. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Jordan to start our legislative priorities and recent council action and updates.
Thanks, Counselor. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to give folks just a few updates about what the council has been up to this year since April, to give you a sense of some of the major activities the council's been engaged in, as well as talk about a few of the council's legislative priorities. And then after that, there will be an opportunity to hear from you all about what some of your districts are looking at in terms of the state legislature and legislative priorities. And if we can identify any areas for collaboration, I know we'd love to be supportive of one another, and that's one of the reasons why we have this call. So to start off here, the council recently passed the county's 2026 annual budget just last week, and the county is currently in a stable financial position, but is in a long-term structural deficit. So over time, revenues have not been keeping pace with inflation and growth in costs for services across the county. In large part, that is due to the fact that in about half of the last 15 years, the council has not taken the 1% allowable increase in property taxes. The council did end up taking that, as well as some bank capacity this year. But long term, the county does face some structural challenges with our budget. In terms of the county's budget, about 75% of the county's budget is for personnel, so people providing services, and about 70% of the county general fund budget is the criminal justice system. So that is the sheriff's office, the prosecuting attorney, the courts, indigent defense, which we'll talk a little bit more about in our legislative priorities, as well as the jail. And so the bulk of the costs that come to the county and the county's general fund are related to the provision of public safety. The county has been working on some different ways as well to support housing development as well as a homelessness response. As folks know, Clark County it's a great place to live, and people keep moving here. And with that, there have been challenges related to supply of housing affordability, and that pressure has the cost pressure has caused both rents and home prices to increase, and that has had an impact on the number of folks in the community who are becoming homeless. And so the county has been doing a fair amount of work on that response. A couple of the big items that have happened this year is that the county has made a pretty significant contribution to Vancouver's Bridge Shelter Project and is collaborating with the city on that large project, which is out by the Vancouver Mall. Councilor Young and I were just there actually yesterday. The city had a tour. They've basically done all the below ground work on that site and are getting ready to do some of the structural above ground work. But that'll have another 120 beds available for folks as they work to transition from being homeless and get them into more permanent and stable housing options. The other big action that the council has taken this year related to housing is the council's put in place a moratorium on redevelopment of mobile home parks. So something that's been happening in mobile home parks in the county is that, the owner of the park will put it up for sale. Often a big, conglomerate or company will come in and buy the mobile home park and then start raising rents. And then also often will try to redevelop the land out under the mobile home park because you can get more money if you subdivide it into single family homes or to multifamily apartment complexes sometimes. And so with a lot of seniors living in mobile home parks in particular, the county has put a moratorium on redevelopment of mobile home parks. So right now in unincorporated county, you can't turn a mobile home park into anything other than a mobile home park. We're not accepting applications for redevelopment of those parks in an effort to preserve those and for county planning staff to have time to be able to develop more long-term regulations around this. And we'll be talking a little bit more about the comprehensive plan later in this meeting. But I know that putting together some of that planning process for how long-term land use is going to happen over the next 20 years in the county is going to be part of that conversation related to the comprehensive plan.
Jordan, could you pause for just a second?
Sure.
Amy, would you be willing to mute the meeting room? I think we're getting a little bit of feedback.
Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, Jordan.
No, thank you. We're able to hear that all okay? Do I need to repeat anything? Okay. So those are just a couple items I wanted to highlight in terms of some of the work that the council has been doing recently. Couple other things I'd note is that the council is looking at passing a new criminal justice sales tax here early in the year, and that will support a lot of what the county's work around the sheriff's office, the jail, the courts, really the entire criminal justice system. And that is as a result of new legislation that the state passed just this last year, House Bill 2015, which provides both that optional sales tax, which the county is looking to take, as well as a grant program for hiring new law enforcement officers. That is, if you've heard Governor Ferguson talk about, he wants $100 million for new law enforcement folks, that is part of that program. And the final item I'd like to highlight in terms of some of the issues that council has been tackling this year is related to public health. So public health is another big function of what the county does. And something that council has been tilting at is access to care, which has been getting more difficult in Clark County, and in particular, access to prenatal care. So for those who are pregnant and expecting, especially if you are on Medicaid, it can be very difficult to access care. You may find yourself waiting months, which if you're pregnant and you need to get in for prenatal care, you don't have that time to wait to access care. And so council's directed our public health staff to work with our local hospital systems and others, as well as other county organizations and other public health jurisdictions across the state to try to find ways to help reduce those barriers. And we also know that, with the passage of HR 1 at the federal level this last year, that in the next couple of years, there are going to be some pretty significant cuts to Medicaid coming, which will also impact our healthcare system. So we're doing what we can at the local level to try to get in front of that. Any questions on any of that before I dive into the legislative priorities for the council?
That's a really good update.
Thank you. So I'll now go into a little bit of a few of the council's legislative priorities this year. As I'm sure you are aware, the state is in a pretty challenging fiscal situation. Earlier projections for state revenue earlier in the year were extremely dire. Some of the more recent state fiscal projections are slightly less dire, with revenues coming in just a little bit lower than expected, but right around what was expected. As the year end happens and as the legislature moves through their session, we'll see where the revenue collection is. But the governor is going to be proposing a no new revenue, so all cuts budget. We will see what the House and the Senate do in response to that. But as I'm sure you're aware, the legislature just passed a whole slew of new revenue packages this last session around, including the new sales tax on many services as well as goods. And so we'll kind of see what happens there. But we have a sense that we're going to be mostly playing defense in this short 60-day session that starts in January. One of the biggest items that we're going to be looking at is indigent defense. So this is public defense. It is a constitutionally mandated service that we have to provide. If you cannot afford a lawyer in a criminal case, we will provide one for you. The county, as the entity that's running, district court and superior court, so most of the court cases in the county are going through the county. There are requirements for new caseload standards that have come down from the Supreme Court that basically significantly reduce the number of cases any individual public defender is allowed to take in a given year. And there is kind of a new weighting scheme for how you can allocate cases to individual public defenders, which, in a vacuum is good. We know our public defenders are overworked. The challenge for the county is that the Supreme Court has given us a decade, 10 years, to comply fully with these new standards, but it will result in about 3 times as many public defenders needed statewide as we currently have. And so, that's going to triple or quadruple our public defense costs from $7 or $8 million a year to $27, $28 million, $30 million a year. Depending on where things kind of land. But given the county's structural budget challenges, it's going to be tough for Clark County and really local governments across the state to comply with what is an unfunded mandate from the state. And I'm sure you're familiar with that in the educational context too, when you get new requirements, but there is not new money to meet those requirements. And so we're going to be working heavily with our delegation, with the Association of Counties. There's actually a lawsuit that the Association of Counties has filed, basically saying that the state has a responsibility to help fund these services. But that's something that we're going to be looking at this year and probably over the next couple of sessions, I would guess. So that's something that's really a heavy focus, since a lot of what the county does is related to public safety. Another priority that the county is looking at is just maintaining funding for current projects in the 179th Street corridor and kind of really countywide through the Transportation Alliance. State money that's already been allocated for transportation and public works improvement projects. In particular, the county is interested in the 179th Street corridor because several years ago, the county lifted, there was an urban holding there in that part of the county around 179th Street, that urban holding was lifted, which basically meant that you can start developing that area to a more kind of urban standard. It's turning from rural to more suburban urban. That has led to significant development, but with that development, you also need the roads and sewer infrastructure and internet and all of those other things to also align with the private development and new subdivisions going in. And so we want to make sure that the state money that we already have allocated for those projects, really over the course of the next decade, is still going to be coming in. And so we're definitely going to be playing defense there and working with our delegation to maintain the funding that is currently in transportation budget. Even as the state is looking at kind of a tough position there. Another item that we'll be looking at this legislative session is capital support. So my understanding is their operating dollars in the state budget are basically none, but that there may be some flexibility in capital budgets. So as you are talking to your own lobbyists and Olympia, I know there may be some more opportunities for some capital budget requests from the legislature than operating requests. But we're looking for capital support for the jail building. Our jail is 40 years old now. So in 1985, Clark County had a population of a little bit over 200,000 people. We are now approaching 530,000 people, and the jail is the same size as it was 40 years ago. If you've had the opportunity to tour it, you'll know that it is, it feels like a 40-year-old building. And we also are dealing with a challenge that a lot of the folks that come into the jail now have pretty severe mental health and substance use challenges, many of them. And the jail has also become a major treatment provider, for opioid medication and things like that. And so not just having the space to house folks, but also the space to provide the kind of treatment that people need, so that hopefully when they are released, they're in a position where they can start to improve their lives and get sober and recover and things like that. And so we're working on a long-term jail project and seeking some state support for that as well. A couple other things I would mention in terms of our priorities this session: continuing to encourage our leadership in Olympia to take action around the supply and affordability of housing, as well as supporting local homelessness programs. As I mentioned, as housing becomes less affordable, it's going to push people out of housing and into homelessness. And so we are really working to, with Olympia, the last few years, the state has backfilled document recording fees. So those are the fees whenever you have a real estate transaction. A portion of those fees fund local homelessness services. When new construction and real estate transactions slow down, that has a direct impact on local dollars going into the homeless response system. The state has backfilled some of those dollars over the last few years. We're going to see if they can continue to do that, as well as working to bring state housing trust fund dollars to the county to continue to support new housing development projects. In the longer term, the county is also working with the city of Vancouver on annexation. If you've ever looked at a map of the county, you'll see that Vancouver has a huge urban growth area. You may be driving around and think you're just in Vancouver. You're technically in the unincorporated county. The city is looking at annexing much or all of that land in the coming years, but that is a significant financial challenge for the city because, in particular, housing does not provide the same revenue that the services cost to provide in those areas. Some of the commercial areas, the Highway 99 corridor, those will be a little bit more lucrative from a tax base perspective for the city, but they're trying to take a balanced approach. So they're not just taking one chunk and then leaving the county with just all of the subdivisions to provide services to, because that's also not something that counties are really well set up to do. Typically, cities grow, people mostly live in cities, services are provided in cities. In the unincorporated part of the county, you'd expect a little bit lower level of service. And so those are most of the main legislative priorities that the county has. So I will pause there if there are any questions or conversation that folks would like to have. And then after that, I'd love to open it up if any of you have some legislative priorities that you're tilting at that maybe the county should either know about or that we could collaborate on where you think there might be some shared interest.
Jordan?
Yeah.
I might just add one little item and touch, and I think it belongs in this section of our agenda.
Please.
And one of that is, and I think, you know, I believe, but I could be incorrect, that all of the school districts are aware, but we have been having a lot more interest and discussion and advocacy in some of our forest lands in the county. And that, you know, that we've drafted a couple of letters to the state lands commissioner, and we basically we have renewed an interest that for well over a decade the county council and the county in general has not shared or not had a whole lot of interest in these timber sales that take place. But those timber sales can have a direct impact on school budgets because a portion of those sales can go to some of the school districts. So we have been contending with that issue. We've written a couple letters, and I have kind of taken the stance at this point, and I think the majority of the council is also in agreement that we've kind of scrambled to react to some of these recent sales that have taken place, and in order for us to get more involved, we have suggested the creation of an advisory group of sorts or commission that would come together and discuss the issue at large and be able to provide a recommendation to the council in the future. And certainly schools should be a slot to be represented in that commission. But you know, feel free to chime in to the council at any time until that advisory board is created on some of these sales if you have a viewpoint one way or another, because it does affect the school district. So just wanted to bring that up. And again, anybody's welcome to comment on that, but they're also welcome to comment on anything that they're doing in their district that they want the county and all the other districts and everybody here to know about.
Thanks. Thanks for that invitation, Glenn. This is Mike Nerland, assistant soup at ESD 112. And I'm sure there would be definitely some interest from our school districts to be part of that advisory council, especially if it impacts funding. And so I can share some of the legislative priorities that the superintendents in the ESD 112 region put together. We recently had our legislative forum. And just as a reminder, ESD 112 covers 6 counties, 31 school districts, so a large portion, and many legislators. And it was well attended. In fact, I've been part of these legislative forums now for over 20 years, and I believe this was one of the best attended and most informative forums for our legislators. But our superintendents have come up with 4 main legislative priorities, and some of this is very similar to what Jordan was talking about, the priorities for the county and city of Vancouver. The first one was fully fund materials, supplies, and operating costs. It's referred to as MSOC. And those are costs like fuel, transportation, safety and security equipment, utilities and insurance, those additional costs that are not fully funded. So what happens is districts need to take money from their local levies to pay for the MSOC costs. Local levies are passed to help support learning in the classroom, help support enrichment activities for kids. So when money is taken from a local levy, put into MSOC, those opportunities from kids are reduced. The second priority was academic achievement focused on foundational skills such as reading, writing, math, especially in those early grades. You know, I'm a firm believer if we put money toward teaching kids, and I'm talking about starting at birth through graduation, we're going to see results in the long run. We're not going to have to have as many remedial programs. I think the number of kids that are identified for special services would be greatly reduced. And that impact of starting young, that if there's any sort of very solid research in education, it's that if those kids get exposure to reading, to literacy, to math at an early age, then they're on a track to graduate on time. It's very solid research. So we understand too that the budget that in this coming year is not rosy, that's for sure. And we all took hits last year. So it'll be kind of like a double whammy. So we're not asking for additional funding. Right now, the state does fund 3 in-service days for school districts, but they mandate what that must be used for. So what we're asking for is flexibility in that, so districts can use that time for professional learning, for math, early literacy, and reading, best strategies, working together. So that's a second priority. A third priority, and just like this is something Jordan said, is addressing funded and unfunded mandates. We all face so many unfunded mandates. And again, where does that money come from? If it's not funded by the state, it comes from local levies and on the general fund. Things like the time spent on public records requests and compliance, extended lunch supervision, specialized transportation, state mandated committees. It all takes time and money away from school districts when these types of things are mandated but not funded. And so we're hoping that they can take a look at legislative actions over the past 10 years that are basically requiring these unfunded mandates and at least reduce or maybe even repeal some of those actions. And the last one is capital request, equitable access to safe, modern learning environments. Just like facilities in the county and within Vancouver, we have so many aging facilities that need work, modernization, or a complete replacement. And right now, to pass a bond, you got to pass it with 60% supermajority, which is always a challenge, especially in the economy right now. And so we are requesting that legislators reduce that supermajority to a simple majority of 50%, just like levies are. But also, for some of our smaller school districts, especially who have, some dilapidated buildings, they need modernization, to continue the small school modernization program. It's a pilot that started last year. It's provided funding for several school districts within our state at really a very minimal cost for the district, but they're able to upgrade their facilities, for some of the school districts out on the beach, create effective tsunami zone evacuation plans for them, and access for kids. And so it just again, we're all in need of those modern facilities, and it's an equity issue because some school districts, some schools, being a former superintendent in Camas, facilities that we had because we were able to pass bonds are not the same as a school district up the gorge. So those are our priorities. And Jordan, if you'd like, I can email you this document that has the legislative priorities on it.
That'd be great.
Any other input from the educators on the panel here?
Okay, I was trying to figure out how to unmute. Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. I got missed in the introductions right at the beginning. So I'm Dr. Christine Maloney. I'm the superintendent of Evergreen Public Schools. And Mike, you did an incredible job sharing the priorities that we talked about as ESD 112 and the superintendents and school districts within that. So thank you for doing that. And it was Justin, while you were talking about, I was thinking of connections, and really one of the major connections is all those unfunded mandates. I mean, for you to have to triple the public defenders amount of people that you're going to employ. We are about 87% staff here in Evergreen, and that is huge. And we are facing right now the impacts of a school funding model that has not kept up with the demands of just existing in this current day. We are facing another $12 million cut this year and $26 million total in the next 3 years. And everybody saw probably the paper that talked about Vancouver's public schools situation. And then there was an article also on us here at Evergreen, a smaller one as well. So last, actually it was on Tuesday night, our board met and went through our priorities, and the priorities for Evergreen is funding special education. So we're looking at taking another $18 million out of our levy, which, as Mike explained, is for enrichment and is for student programs. And this isn't fair and this isn't right. And I do understand whether our state right now is in some dire needs themselves with their budget. But that is a priority for our board. Fixing the prototypical school funding model so that we are back to fully funding schools, public education across the state is essential, and the state has backed away from that. So I think we are we're around 10% less than what we got a few years back, right? So we were 50-some% down to 43%. Of the state budget. And so they're not fulfilling their constitutional duty to fund public education. Another priority that Mike did a nice job explaining is MSOCs. So our insurance has increased 100% in the last couple of years. So we went from $2.5 million a year to $5 million a year. And that is not funded. We get a slight increase for MSOCs. I think it was last year was a 2%. That does not cover, that insurance is one example of that. So that is a major issue. We are looking at, banning all types of refrigerators, and, if somebody has a personal heater and if they have a microwave in their classroom that, they utilize for kids, those type of things, we're down to trying to figure out how can we cut without severely impacting the education in the classroom. Along with unfunded mandates, we also we're talking about making sure that we have flexibility in the things that we actually have right now. So being conscious of the money, the lack of money at the state, and so that is a priority for our board too, is to make sure that we can have some flexibility in the mandates that do come out, and that'd be very, very helpful for us as we focus on student achievement. And let's see what else. The other thing that the board agreed upon was we definitely need to rework the levy equalization allocation, okay? Because we don't get any. We don't qualify for it anymore. And there is a huge disparity across the state for public education regarding LEAs with the levy equalization. So I think, but Mike, you did a great job with that. So I'm going to step back and let somebody else share.
So I'll jump in on behalf of Washougal Schools, kind of echoing what Assistant Superintendent from ESD, Mike Nerland, shared. So our board established our legislative priorities as the focus on those MSOCs, so those other types of costs, the focus on foundational skills, and then the unfunded mandates. And then one that is not included in the list that he went through, or that Dr. Christine shared, is providing school districts with more flexibility around the use of impact fees. Washougal is in sort of an unusual situation. We've had a declining enrollment trend due to the high cost of housing in our community. resulting in fewer students that we're serving because of the way the impact fee formula works. It means that we are no longer able to collect those, and it started essentially a 10-year countdown to when we need to start rebating those back to the people who originally paid them. Our district is advocating for a legislative change that would provide flexibility to school districts to expand the way that districts can use those funds and to use them to target some of the other unfunded mandates that the legislature has passed over the last several years. So things like the safety improvements and the energy efficiency standards that Evergreen also talked about. I don't believe Washougal is the only district that will end up in this situation based on the longer term trend around the number of children that most districts are serving. But we would definitely benefit earlier because I think we're earlier in that 10-year cycle. So that, oh, I'm sorry. And then I emailed a copy of it to Amy so that she can pass it along to the council members on the call.
Can I ask a quick question on that? I'm curious if, because impact fees are supposed to be essentially they're, accommodating some of the growth that's taking place. So is there kind of like a population shift happening where there's new construction happening and the demand on education, so there's more students enrolling in those areas and some of the existing areas are declining, or is it just a decline or kind of flat around the entirety of the school district boundary?
Sure. So in Washougal, what we've seen is that the population of the city continues to go up, but that the number of students we're serving is actually declining. And it has to do with the cost of housing relative to what families can afford. And so we think it's the missing middle housing that as the average price of a house here in our community has gone up to something like 650-ish thousand, it's priced kind of like starter homes or homes that might be approachable for a family just looking to start having children out. And we see an increasing trend in like a larger retiree population and a much smaller number of people who have any direct experience with our school district at all. So a lot of people are moving here after they have children, and those children are now out of their household. So that's kind of our local context. There is construction happening in Washougal, but and there are apartment complexes that are going up, but they're I think market rate apartments with rent that is like $2,500 to $3,000 a month for 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, which are obviously not something that a young family is going to be able to afford or be able to live in with a small family.
All right, thank you.
Hi, this is Dr. Jenny Rodriguez, Ridgefield School District. So I just was going to add, we're one of the few districts that is growing in enrollment. There's a tremendous amount of development happening in Ridgefield, and we face some of the same challenges, I would say, as Washougal, that we're pricing ourselves out of a starter home market. So we're actually not really seeing growth at the elementary level at this point, but we're still seeing secondary age students moving into the district. We access healthy impact fees. They are nowhere near what is necessary to actually build a building. So we're in the process of building an elementary school by cobbling together impact fees, matching dollars through the SCAP, which are not really matching dollars, but we're accessing what we can through OSPI and the state SCAP program. And then we had to run a capital levy successfully to make up the difference. And it's about a third in that expense to get that building opened. And also only possible because we've used prior money to fund the design of the school. So there was already some work that had been done. The property was already owned, so that purchase had been already paid for. So lots of challenges, as you've heard from everyone already, but around keeping up with aging infrastructure, but also just new infrastructure for the places where we do need that as well.
Do we have anybody else that wants to chime in, or are we ready to move on? Sounds like we're ready to move on. So thank you for providing all that. It's very fascinating, especially for me who's not a part of the education system, to hear all of what's going on, and it's it all carries a similar tune. You know, we're all being asked to do more with less, and maybe not even asked, we're being required to do more with less. So it's a tough place to be in. All right, let's go ahead and move forward then to Comprehensive Plan 2025 periodic update. And so I will turn that over to county staff at this point in time to give that update.
Thank you. Speaking, this is Jenna Kay with Community Planning. I am on my camera, maybe. I'm going to tag team with my colleague Amy Wooten on this update, but also wanted to note that Oliver Orgiaco, Community Planning Director, and Jose Alvarez, Community Planning Program Manager, also on the call and may help us field the questions that you may have once we give the initial update. So we will get started. All right, so we have shown you all this slide before over the past couple of years, or at least the previous version of this slide. And, you know, this is the high-level overview of the components of the comprehensive plan periodic update process. And to organize this complex project, to update our comprehensive plan, we have four, major phases of work. Each phase has distinct tasks and activities that are planned to engage community members and key stakeholders in identifying issues, developing policy concepts, and shaping the final recommended plan that will ultimately be considered by the county council. The county mandatory due date is December 31st of 2025. However, we are running behind schedule, and so we will have some updated dates that we'll share with you for the school-related items as we move through the presentation. And throughout this entire public process, policymakers are making decisions and providing direction to staff. And then the cities within the county are also doing a similar process in parallel, and then we coordinate on certain pieces. So far, we have completed the project initiation and shaped the plan phases. Check marks are indicating steps that have been completed. We are currently in the review and refine stage, and the next major decision point is the county council's selection of a preferred land use alternative. That land use alternative will be the basis for the proposed comp plan that's brought forward through the adoption process, as well as the final environmental impact statement as well. As of right now, we are anticipating the adoption process to start in early 2026, and our current estimate is that the adopting ordinance would be adopted and go into effect in June of 2026. And I think Amy's gonna pick up on the next slide.
Hi, everybody. Amy Wooten again with our county. This slide provides you an overview of the planning assumptions around populations and employment that we need to plan for in the 20-year planning horizon. It notes the two areas with major legislative changes to the Growth Management Act that need to be addressed in this comp plan update, and they relate to housing and climate change. To accommodate population and employment growth projected, cities and county have been considering possible land use alternatives. 3 land use alternatives were studied in the draft environmental impact statement, and an agricultural land study has also recently been completed. This information, plus public feedback, legislative requirements, and other considerations will inform county council's selection of a preferred land use alternative. Hearings on that selection are scheduled in January, as Jenna already noted, with council confirming their selection in early February is what we're scheduled for. Regardless of what exact exactly the preferred alternative ends up being based on new housing requirements in GMA. We know that preferred alternative will need to include higher housing densities in some places in the cities and urban unincorporated areas. This slide shows proposed zoning changes in Clark County's urban unincorporated areas. The raised yellow highlight indicates residential areas that are proposed to accommodate additional density. The areas that are most effective will be Vancouver, Evergreen, and Battleground school districts. Alternative 2 proposes to upzone all multifamily zones. Most of the areas identified are partially or wholly developed already. Significant increases will be focused around the Fairgrounds, Interchange, and Highway 99 corridor. Well, this example highlights changes within county jurisdiction. Each city is also similarly considering higher density housing and land use alternatives to meet the new GMA housing requirements. As you know, part of that work, the school district's capital facilities plans need to be updated and adopted by reference as part of the periodic update. So school districts, specifically Evergreen, Hawkinson, La Center, Washougal, and Woodland, have submitted updated 6-year capital facility plans to the county. Thank you, Leanne Bremer. These plans will be presented to the Planning Commission and then Council for review in the coming year. Once a preferred land use alternative is selected, the county will need to update the 20-year capital facilities plan in the comp plan, and we will need school district inputs for that. Those are much higher level estimate for 20 years out. Staff will plan to coordinate through Leanne on these long-term estimates at that point. Next slide. As part of the periodic update process, text within the schools element, which is contained as Chapter 10 of the county's comprehensive plan, was updated in partnership with this group in 2024. The draft updated chapter was recently shared with Planning Commission at a work session in November, and they didn't have any substantive comments or questions about the proposed changes. Staff will seek approval of draft language from PC and Council for all chapters, but specifically the school chapter in 2026. So that concludes planning staff's presentation unless there are questions.
I actually, if I could, I'm curious, ultimately it's going to be the county council that adopts a preferred alternative. And I don't know that we have heard from any of the school districts. And if we have, I apologize. We just get bombarded with information on this, but I am really wanting to know, is handling of growth more impactful to the school system in higher density, or I don't want to term it that, but as you traditionally describe as sprawl? I mean, is building a new school out in a new area, is that more difficult than accommodating the growth in the existing system and causing the existing school buildings to not have enough capacity? What is it harder for the school district to work with? Maybe you don't really know that. That's okay. But if anybody does have any comments on it, I would be interested in hearing that.
This is Jenny. I don't know that there's an answer to that question. So, because the size of the districts are very different. So, like Dr. Maloney is on here from Evergreen and has, I don't even know, Christine, but 30 plus schools in her system. So when you add a certain amount of students, there's a lot of campuses to spread those students across. It also means she has more facilities that require maintenance, and so the deferred maintenance demand becomes very difficult. Here in Ridgefield, I have very few schools, so when there's new development coming in, it's really hard to accommodate that because I simply don't have anywhere to put them. We are all hamstrung by the bond supermajority requirement that's probably not going to go away, whether we're big or small, but that's an impact for all of us. So I don't know if that helps provide some context. Like, it's all hard.
Yeah, it does a little bit. But if there is, if you're looking at the alternatives and it's worse or better one way or another, make sure that you guys are a part of this process too. So make sure and submit comments on that.
The other piece of that too, for a growing district is, if you can't pass a bond, then you end up, buying portables with impact fees. And you've got Portable City on some of these campuses, which, yeah, there's classrooms there, but the core facilities, like the gym, the library, the lunchroom, those are all, it's just a crunch because, you have a school built for 500 kids and you've got 800 kids with 200 housed in portables. They all still, take physical education. They all still need to have a place to eat lunch, a library, all of that. So that's a big challenge for growing districts.
Yeah, it is interesting. The grade school that my kids go to, which is Franklin Elementary, we had portables there for I think the entire time that we've had kids there, and they kept adding and adding and adding until finally they were able to do a large scale renovation and addition to the building, which accommodated all the capacity. But yeah, very interesting subject on, I would imagine each situation is different too, because you probably reach certain thresholds where this kitchen no longer can handle this. And now you have a large cost there. So anyway, any of those comments would be much appreciated as we're moving forward on this.
Yeah, so I'll add that we're currently studying one of our urban schools properties, which is undersized for the site, from the state's framework for the amount of acreage that you need for a school. And I guess kind of to your point around when we work on densifying a community, which I think is the plan for Washougal over the next 20-ish years, those existing school facilities, so like the Hathaway campus, which actually is really similar to the Franklin campus that you talked about, it's landlocked by other, zoned property. And there's really no way for us to expand the school campus without buying pieces of a neighborhood or coming up with some really like unusual plans. And so when we talk about like if we were to like dramatically increase the number of students who attend that school, the playground really can't get any bigger. If we are going to redevelop a school, it has to go up, it can't go out. And even with portables, there's limited land around that school where you can place portables without shortchanging things like the exterior spaces for athletics and recreation. In the planning for expanding the urban growth boundary, I think it's important for the council to pay attention to making sure that as you're expanding those boundaries, that at least some of the land is set aside or zoned in a way that it could serve as future school sites. And that might be a way that we can help mitigate the impact on growing areas of the county and the districts that are serving those. Having school districts competing using very limited funding for newly available property with people who are planning to develop it for homes is really challenging.
And thank you for that. Jose, I was under the impression that schools could be built in any zone with a conditional use permit. Is that inaccurate?
I think it varies by the type of school. I think it might be the case for elementary schools. Primarily our single family, our residential zones. I don't think there's a lot in the commercial and definitely not industrial. I don't want that mix. But for the high schools, I don't think it's generally allowed in there may be more of a conflict in the single family commercial zones. But yeah, I'd have to check the zoning.
Okay.
The
I would
code,
be interested
yeah.
in looking at that because, you know, this is kind of an interesting issue that I have seen over the years is different, you know, land that has different zoning has different values to it. You know, if there's a method for schools to be able to come in and buy an industrial land, if it's appropriately suited for a school, of course, but if they could buy that industrial land at industrial land prices, rather than what I've been seeing is, you know, people petition the county or the city for a rezone. They come in, they rezone the land, and then the school gets a chance to buy it, but it's now at residential land prices, which is triple, if not more, the cost of industrial land. I mean, if there's a method that we could provide the schools an opportunity to buy land at a lower cost, I think that would be worthy of looking into.
Yeah, it's just a challenge to,
Yeah,
because you're competing with the market, and definitely for residential, and that's primarily where schools try to locate, where they're going to be close to where students are going to be located. So that's some of the challenge. It's just the competition of limited amount of resources.
we'll move on from that subject, but if any of you have comments on that, feel free to send them to me if you see any value in looking into that. If not, then it's just sometimes great ideas are not good ideas. Okay, have we gone through, I don't think, let's see, we've gone through, do you have any more, Amy, on this subject?
No, thank you for asking. I'm done.
Okay, and any other comments at all regarding the comprehensive plan update before we move on? Okay, all right, looks like we're moving a little bit ahead of time, which is great. We can give you all a few minutes back of your time, but did want to go, actually this could take a while. We never know, but going on to the subject of the challenges that districts are experiencing regarding funding, SNAP benefits, and any other updates or items for discussion that may not be related to any of the agenda items. And I'll open that up to anyone.
I left, oh, I'm sorry.
Could you go again? We had you muted.
Yeah. Lance, Isla here. I laughed when you said that you thought maybe schools could be able to buy property cheaper, and I'm sure your real estate development people would laugh at you about that, because I just don't see a community, and I've been here since 1985, who would be willing to say, oh gosh, if a school wants it, this $17 million piece of property will go for 10. I think you would have to legislate it somehow to do that. But boy, I would support it. I'd write letters. I think it would be a great idea. Having been married to an architect who built schools for 35 years, I can tell you that it is a lot more complicated than anybody on the ground understands. So many regulations, and there's so many permits required, and everything just impacts everything else. If you could get schools like in maybe a campus kind of area, and say, like they've done out with Chinook, Alki, and Skyview. That's a really nice arrangement. It's worked very well, because you can just, this is the street I'm going to take my kids on from the time they're in first grade all the way through high school. That kind of a thing is really good, and the school district, Vancouver School District, was fortunate to be able to grab that land when they did. But there's a lot of restrictions by the state on how much land has to be provided for each kind of school. And since you can't predict perfectly, but fairly closely, where development's going to be, I mean, you know, Ridgefield is going to continue to just go nuts. It's just going to happen. As are the other north and eastern areas. Anyway, I just, it's really an undershared problem, and everybody has families. Families generate kids. And I just think generally the public does not understand the complexity of putting schools in areas where they're also needed. That's the end of it.
Yeah, and I would just add, you know, the reason this subject that became interesting to me is because I followed the Vancouver Innovation Center. I don't know how many are familiar with that, but it was a huge chunk of land. It was all zoned industrial, and it was all cheap land because it was zoned industrial. Developer from out of state came in, and I in no way fault the developer. I mean, I think all in all, the Vancouver Innovation Center is a huge plus for the city of Vancouver. But during that process, the Vancouver School District was interested in some of that property for a school. I would be interested in finding a mechanism how we can allow the school district to buy it at its initial land value prior to being rezoned, because what happened was the city rezoned it to mixed use, and then the developer's like, hey, school district, now you want it, now you can pay mixed use price rather than the industrial that we bought it for. So I don't know if there is a mechanism for that, but I would be all for it because when we create land value in a rezone, which is what we do literally at the stroke of a pen, I would love to see the public benefit from that rather than the development community. It's nothing against the development community. There are so many needs in our community. I just would like to see that increase in land value go to the community instead of the developer.
It's this is Jenny again, and thank you to the community member that spoke up. It's an interesting idea because I know for us here in Ridgefield, we also look at where, and I know this is county, but we look at where the city boundary is as things get shifted and changed. And we're looking at, farms and families that have been here generationally and they're ready to retire. And so they wait for that rezoning to occur so they can sell the land and retire. At the same time, that becomes a whole bunch of houses and now there's no school to serve those students. So I think it's an interesting idea when you think about the long-term development plan and this idea of what's zoned industrial. And do we cite that in places where we could anticipate we may eventually need schools? So from a long-term perspective, I think it's worth thinking through.
Well, certainly worth it. I mean, I've learned in my term that some things just come to a dead end and aren't possible. But this is something I've been interested in a long time, and hopefully our community planning can look into that and see if there's any possible mechanisms where we can try to help with that. Okay, I don't think there were any other thoughts. Quick question about the agenda, the topics that we handle. Are there any suggestions or ideas that anybody would have for our next meeting, which is in 2026 in spring? We don't know the exact date at this point, but if there are any suggestions, now is the time to make it. You can also always send us an email, send Amy an email with any topics that you would like to have on the agenda. Is there anything anybody would like to say at the moment? Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, this is Isla. As long as it's after April 15th, you can have it anytime you want in the spring.
Tax day.
Tax day.
That happens to also be my mom's birthday. Yeah. All right. Well, it sounds like we have extinguished the entirety of our agenda. So we'll see you next time. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate your input, and we will adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.